For 10,000 years, the world ran on muscle. Human muscle, animal muscle, the slow, patient turning of a water wheel, the lazy spin of a windmill waiting for the breeze. Time was circular. It followed the seasons. You worked when the sun rose. You slept when it set. In winter, the world hibernated. Power was finite. Distance was tyranny. Time moved at the speed of a horse. If you wanted to move something heavy, you needed 100 men sweating in unison. If you wanted to cross a country, you needed a week of hard riding. If you wanted heat, you burned wood, and the smoke rose thin and white into a vast blue sky. There was silence. Not total silence, but natural silence. The wind in the trees, the rush of a river, the call of a bird. This was the world before, the green world. And then we found the black stone, coal. It had been there all along, buried deep under England's hills. Compressed forests from a world that died 300 million years ago. A battery of ancient sunlight, waiting to be discharged. At first, it was just a curiosity, a rock that burned. But coal burns hotter than wood, much hotter. Hot enough to melt iron, hot enough to boil water into steam, with a fury that wood could never match. But to get it, we had to go down. Before the factories rose, the mines descended. Imagine a shaft, pitch black, dropping 1,000 feet into the earth. The air is hot, stale, and thick with dust. Down here, men hacked at the walls lying on their sides, naked because of the intense heat. But they weren't alone. Children, some as young as 5, sat in the absolute darkness for 12 hours a day. Their job was to open and shut the ventilation doors for the carts. They were called trappers. They sat in the dark, listening to the rats, holding a string, waiting, and the horses, the pit ponies, foals born in the fields but lowered into the mines, never to see the sun again. They lived, worked, and died in the eternal night. This was the fuel of the revolution. Every machine that would later scream on the surface was fed by the silence of the underground. The earth woke up, and it was angry. His name was James Watt, a Scottish instrument maker, quiet, methodical, obsessed with efficiency. In 1776, while America declared independence from kings, Watt built something that would enslave and liberate humanity in equal measure. The steam engine, picture it, a massive iron cylinder, a piston inside rising and falling like a heartbeat, steam rushing in, hot, violent, desperate to expand, then condensed, cooled, pulled back. The piston drops, a rod connects to a wheel, the wheel turns, and for the first time in history, man had created a tireless worker, a machine that didn't sleep, didn't eat, didn't complain. It just worked. The sound it made was unnatural, a deep, rhythmic hiss, clank, hiss, clank, like the breathing of some iron god. People called it the fire engine, the steam horse, but it was more than that. It was the heartbeat of a new world. But not everyone accepted the machines. In the shadows of the night, men gathered on the moors, faces blackened with coal dust to hide their identities, sledgehammers in their hands. They were the Luddites, skilled weavers who saw the machines not as progress, but as monsters that were eating their livelihoods. They didn't hate technology. They hated that it was stealing their ability to feed their children. They broke into the factories under the cover of darkness. They smashed the spinning frames. They burned the mills to the ground. It was a war, man against machine. The British government was so terrified of this uprising that they sent more soldiers to fight the Luddites in northern England than they sent to fight Napoleon in Portugal. Think about that. The machines were so valuable, so essential to the new order, that the army was ordered to shoot its own citizens to protect them. The Luddites lost, of course. Flesh always loses against iron, but their rage proved one thing. Progress is never victimless. With the resistance crushed, the cities exploded. In 1800, London was a city of 1 million people. By 1850, it had swollen to 2.5 million. By 1900, it would be the largest city on earth. They came from the countryside in waves, families with nothing, chasing the promise of wages, and the cities ate them alive. There was no housing for this many people, so they packed into the rookeries, slums. Imagine a single room, no bigger than a modern bedroom. Now put 4 families in it. Chalk lines drawn on the floor to separate them. No toilet, no running water, no privacy. The streets outside were narrow mazes of mud and waste. The buildings leaned toward each other, blocking out the little sunlight that pierced the smoke. The sky turned black, not metaphorically, literally. Thousands of factories, tens of thousands of chimneys, all burning coal, All day, all night. The smoke didn't rise and disappear like wood smoke. It was thick, greasy. It hung in the air like a curse. It coated the buildings, the trees, and the lungs of the people in a layer of black grime. In the summer of 1858, London experienced the Great Stink. The Thames, the river that had fed the city for 1,000 years, had become an open sewer. Human waste, industrial waste, dead animals, all dumped into the same water people drank. People began to understand. We had built something magnificent, but we were drowning in its filth. But the smell was only a warning. The water carried something worse. They called it the Blue Death, cholera. It arrived in the belly of merchant ships from India, much like the plague had arrived in Messina centuries before. But this time, the enemy wasn't a flea. It was the water itself. In the crowded slums of London, families shared a single pump. They drank the same water they washed their clothes in, the same water they dumped their waste into. When cholera struck, it was terrifyingly fast. A healthy man could drink a glass of water at breakfast and be a shriveled corpse by dinner. The body expelled all its fluids. The blood thickened to tar. The skin turned a bruised, terrified blue. In 1854 in Soho, hundreds died in a single week within a few blocks. Carts rolled through the streets again, collecting bodies, echoing the Black Death. But this wasn't God's wrath. This was man-made. We had poisoned our own well. The factories never slept, and the people who ran them never rested. Men worked until their backs bent, women until their hands bled, children until their growth was stunted, bodies frozen at the height of the machines they tended. In the cotton mills of Manchester, a 6-year-old could be hired as a scavenger. Their job? To crawl under the spinning frames while they were still running, picking up loose cotton threads. If your hand slipped, the machine didn't stop. It just kept turning, and you became part of the mechanism. Look into their eyes. These children staring back from old photographs, faces blackened with coal dust, eyes far older than their years. They don't smile, they don't play, they just exist. In London, the chimney sweeps were the ghosts of the city. Boys as young as 4, sent up narrow chimneys to scrape out the soot. The flues were so tight they could barely breathe. The soot filled their lungs, burned their skin. Many got stuck and died in the walls of the wealthy. But there was a horror even worse than the mines or the mills. The match girls, women and girls who worked in match factories, dipping wood into white phosphorus. The fumes were toxic. It started with a toothache. Then the gums would swell. Then the jawbone itself would begin to rot. It was called Phossy Jaw. The bone would die and break apart inside the mouth. The smell was unbearable. And in the dark, the exposed bone would glow a faint, sickly green. They were literally disintegrating while they worked. This was the price of a light. This was the cost of a fire in the hearth. And as the smoke blotted out the sun, humanity did something else. We killed the night. Before industry, when the sun went down, the world stopped. Darkness was absolute. But the factories couldn't stop. Profit didn't sleep. So we invented the gaslight. By the 1840s, London was glowing with a sickly yellow artificial light. Gas lamps hissed on every street corner. Inside the factories, the lights burned 24 hours a day. We had broken the cycle of nature. There was no longer day and night. There was only shift A and shift B. Workers forgot the rhythm of the sun. They lived in a perpetual smog-choked twilight. This unnatural light changed the human psyche. It created a city of shadows, of Jack the Ripper, of crimes hidden in the yellow fog. We had conquered the dark, but we had created a new kind of nightmare. And then came the railway. If the factory was the body of the Industrial Revolution, the railway was its nervous system. Before the train, England was a collection of isolated towns. A journey from London to Manchester took 3 days. The train did it in 4 hours. Picture the first time you saw a steam train. You're standing on a platform. The air smells of coal smoke and oil. You hear it before you see it. A low rumble, growing louder, then the whistle. A shriek like nothing in nature. Sharp, piercing, announcing its arrival like the cry of some iron beast. And then it appears. A wall of black metal and steam, roaring toward you. Smoke billowing from the stack. Wheels taller than a man, spinning so fast they blur. It doesn't slow. It doesn't swerve. It just comes. And for a moment, every animal instinct in your body screams, run, but you don't. Because this is progress. The train didn't just move people. It moved time itself. The world shrank. Distance had been the great barrier of human history. The train killed it. By 1850, the transformation was complete. Britain was no longer a green island. It was the workshop of the world. We had won. We had conquered nature, bent it to our will, turned coal into power, steam into speed, iron into empire. But when you look at the photographs from that era, you don't see triumph. You see exhaustion. You see soot-blackened faces, hollow eyes, bodies bent from labor. You see a victory that cost everything. The air was poison. The rivers were sewers. The children were crippled. But the machines kept running, because progress once started is almost impossible to reverse. We had built a new world, but we had paid for it with the sky itself. Stand on a street in London today, and you won't see the smoke. The air is clean. We fixed those problems, eventually, but the engine they built, the system of endless consumption, ceaseless production, that never stopped. It just got faster. The coal furnaces became oil refineries. The steam engines became internal combustion. Different fuel, same fire. The Industrial Revolution didn't end. It just went global. And now, we're all living in the city of smoke. We just can't see it anymore. Watching the past, so we can understand the present. And together we keep history resurrected. I'll see you in the next era.